time. Okay. Fridays, things people schedule makeup classes. I don't want to deal with it. All right. Good. Maybe you're not happy with it, but that's the answer. What else is on your mind? You'll be recording a link at a later date. So Bree will send around a link to the Zoom, which you can attend remotely, or it'll be recorded for some point for you to watch in the future.
If you want to log into the live, then
Go. No. Tomorrow is going to the first Langdell session starting tomorrow will be at noon. We'll send around the link later. You can come in person. I don't know what room it is, but we somewhere in this building. You can do it live on Zoom, or you can do it watching it later, recording. Going forward, the next session is February. I have it on my calendar. Just give me a moment. The 25th, is that right? Yes, Saturday the 25th. That will be starting at 10:30 till noon. Okay, and thereafter Saturdays. Did I not turn it on? I'm sorry. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, it should be on right now. Okay. Oh, it's not working today. You don't see it? It's letting you sign in? Okay. All right. Other questions? Why don't I see it? I am not seeing my iClicker thing.
it's 11 to
No, I believe you. I'm not seeing it though. All right, I'll start talking and I'll go along the way. All right, our last class, we talked about nuisances. And we explained the important takeaway is what is the relevant remedy, right? What is the relevant remedy for different types of injuries? Okay. So because my app is not working, I'll just have to call on someone for this first question. Here we go. In progress. Can you join it? Resume session. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's do question number one then. This will be for everyone, and I'll call on someone in particular. Question number one is going to be a short answer. What kind of remedy is available to compensate a plaintiff for past injuries caused by a nuisance? That's your question, please. What kind of remedy is available to compensate a plaintiff for past injuries caused by a nuisance? Please put your answer in. And who's next? Kendall. Okay. Oh, that's right. Remember, we finished over there. That's right. Lloyd. Okay. Got it. Got it. All right, another 15 seconds, please, and then I'll go to Kendall. All right, I'm going to stop it now. Kendall, what is your answer? Temporary damages. What are temporary damages? Correct. The goal of temporary damages is to compensate the plaintiff for any damages that occurred prior to litigation, or even before the litigation concludes, because litigation can take years. Right? Imagine a lawsuit takes a year to litigate. During that year, you're still suffering the nuisance, right? So during that year, it's still considered you're still accumulating temporary damages. Oh, you're right. There's another pendle. This is getting really creepy. Okay. Everyone okay with that? Temporary damages. Let's do question number 2, and this will be for the ARA in a few moments. Question number 2 says, what kind of remedy or remedies, plural, would compensate a plaintiff for future injuries that a nuisance will continue to cause? Again, this is future injuries. All right, another 10 seconds. Okay, Diara, what is your answer here? She gave me 2 answers. Okay, so permanent damages and injunction. Can you explain the difference in what those are, please? Uh-huh. Okay, what's the purpose of an injunction? Just spell it out a little bit, please. Excellent answer. Perfect. Very good answers, right? Okay, so if you want to remedy some sort of ongoing future injury, you got a couple choices. The court can award an injunction. Injunction says either stop doing something, stop polluting, or you must do something. For example, use a filtering technology to make less smoke, whatever it happens to be, right? An injunction without question stops a nuisance, and there's no ongoing injury. The other remedy that we discussed is what's called permanent damages. A permanent damage is a one-time payoff from the defendant to the plaintiff to compensate him for any future losses. It's one time. After the permanent damages are awarded, you can't go back to the defendant for more money. Unless, because someone always asks this, there's a new nuisance or perhaps a nuisance changes in some degree. Okay. Now, I'm sorry, name tag? What's your name? Marcel. Why would a court, or let me ask the question differently. What are the pros and cons of why a court might issue a injunction or permanent damages? Why would they choose one remedy over the other?
Really harmful to a for a company to have to shut down their business entirely.
Good, yeah. Impact society. And then why would a company choose to, I'm sorry, why would a court choose to issue permanent damages?
It's kind of a compromise between both the parties.
Okay, so one more question, Marcel. Which remedy does the corporation prefer?
For me.
And what does the homeowner
Oh,
prefer?
sorry, the corporation. They all, well, I mean,
You're right, you're right. Which remedy does the corporation prefer? And what does the homeowner prefer?
probably permanent damages, but I mean, again,
No, what does the homeowner want?
the behavior to stop.
Jose, what does the homeowner want? Why do you have no idea? Were you paying attention to last class? Why? Nate?
Injunction?
Why would the homeowner prefer the injunction? And what can they use that injunction for? What can they use that as leverage for? More money. That's right. The importance of an injunction. The importance of an injunction is its leverage, right? The homeowner can say, okay, I'm going to dangle this injunction. Say, oh, wow, you want to shut down your factory? How about you give me some more money? Right? Everyone's got a price. Everybody has a price. And you know what that price is? When you got the injunction in your hand, then you find your price. You can set your price. Okay? It's her question if you couldn't hear it. Right. So when the judge says, I'm going to issue an injunction, there's usually a settlement period. Right? Hillary asked, well, what happens if you run the risk that the judge issues the order immediately and doesn't give you a chance to negotiate? That's rare. At least in my experience, almost always when a court sends it back from appeals and they're about to issue this massive ruling, the judge always says, would the parties like some time to think about it? And the answer is almost always going to be yes. Right? Because no one wants a court order hanging over their head. Because with a court order, if you screw up, you're in contempt. And that's a daily fine. even it involves a jail time if you file like contempt of court. Versus if you have a settlement and there's a breach, well, that takes some time to smooth things out. But it's a good thought. Yeah, I mean, in reality, you always read these Supreme Court cases in your case book. You never think about what happens after that, right? The case always go back down to the lower court, and invariably they work it out, right? They find some settlement because you don't want a permanent injunction against you. No one wants that. They might agree to a settlement of some sort. Okay. All right, we go with questions number 1 and 2. Yes, Grayson.
So if they were to, company or the homeowner gets the injunction on the company, say the company just moves, let's say, 5 miles down the road, gets more land. Does that
I see what you're asking. Yeah. So I think your question, if I can maybe state a little more broadly, can companies take creative bookkeeping exercises, right, to try to evade the remedy? I think the answer is not, right? Usually the question I get is, what if the company sells it to another company, right? They just change the name. It doesn't matter. When you acquire an asset, you get all the judgments against it, including any injunctions. I think, to use your question, if you move 5 miles down the road, any judge will say, okay, this is stupid, right? You're trying to evade my ruling, contempt, right? And that's the reason why you don't want a contempt citation. That's really bad because you can have the judge might say, okay, you're in contempt of court. I'm issuing a fine of $10,000 per day till you comply. Go. Okay, no one can afford that, right? After a week or so, you're dropping, 100 grand. So you can't afford to have contempt citations. Also, it's really bad for your lawyer to deal with. It's expensive. In theory, a judge can incarcerate you, throw you in jail till you're no longer in contempt of court. It probably won't happen, but in theory, that can be done. They usually think a significant fine is enough. Yeah, I always tell students, you never want to be held in contempt of court unless your client needs it to happen. Right. So, and I'll just say this for real. There are cases where the judge is being completely unreasonable, and the judge is threatening you with contempt of court, and you might be willing to take it to make a point that you want to appeal, so that you can appeal the contempt citation. Risky, because you might be in jail for a while. A classic example is reporters who have, get a leak, right, of information, and there's a subpoena requiring to disclose the information. And the reporter says, I will not disclose my confidential source. And you have reporters sit in jail for months at a time because they will not disclose information to make the point, my First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, press, important. So my rule is, if you're the lawyer, go home at night to your family, right? Actually, don't go to jail. Let your client go to jail. You don't go to jail. But there might be some cases where the lawyer needs to make a point. Anyway, but don't go to jail, please. It's bad. If you do, make it really worth it. There are some Blackman's evaluations. Blackman said, "Go to jail if it's worth it." That's exactly what I said. It's amazing when I say something, and I see what the students write in the evals. Like, wow, where'd they get there? I'm like, one semester. Do you remember the case where there was a divorce, and the wife had put the husband through business school, and as soon as the husband graduated, she dumped him. He dumped her. Remember that case? And the question was the value of the business degree. So, oh my God, one semester. I put up numbers in the value of a law degree. And as you can imagine, different people with a law degree have different earning potential. That's just going to be a fact of life. And I showed the curve, right? Where some people make a lot of money with a law degree, and most people make a substantial sum. That is, you make more than you would have made with a bachelor's degree. In other words, if you have a 4-year degree and you stop, what's your salary then? And if you have a 4-year degree plus a law degree, what's your salary with the degree, right? So there's something more. But I said for a certain percentage of law school graduates, they don't make more money than they would with a 4-year degree. That is, the law degree adds nothing to their lifetime earning potential. So I said, for some law students, law school will not help their earning potential. It's not worth it for them. So what did I get in the evaluation? Blackman said from the bottom of the class, you should drop out because it's not worth it, which is not even remotely close. And it wasn't about GPA. I'm just saying, among all lawyers, there's earning distributions. It's nothing with grade point average. In fact, a lot of people who don't do well here make a lot of money. Trust me, you know who these people are. People who barely make it by, they graduate past the bar, and they make a boatload of money. It's true. You guys are smiling, right? And there are people who do really well and who struggle, and who really struggle to make a living. Grades are not going to affect. But anyway, they said, Pete Blackman said that people in the bottom of the class should drop out because they won't make any money. I'm like, oh my God, they went to complain. So I don't think I used that statistic again because they just weren't ready for it. I tried. All right. Everybody okay with question 2? All right. All right. I want to now move on to today's topic. Right. So I'm going to give you a term. Servitude. Right. Servitude. Okay. This term hasn't been canceled quite yet. We can use it. Servitude. Look, I can still say landlord, I think. I'm not sure. It's a feudalism. It's a feudal term. Yeah. Servitude. This is an umbrella term that refers to a lot of different things, right? Right. That's actually the title of the chapter of your book. What is a servitude? Right? A servitude is a way of controlling land use. Okay? A servitude is a way of controlling land use. A servitude either requires someone to do something on land or requires them to not do something on land. Right? A servitude can require you to do something on land or it can require you to not do something on land, right? Servitudes, again, is this big category. And there are lots of different kinds of servitudes. I will give you 2 of them now. We're going to do one of them today, and the other one we'll do in about a week or so. Right? The first type of servitude is what's called an easement. Easement. E-A-S-E-M-E-N-T. Easement. That's the readings for today, and I think for next class as well. The other type of servitude is what's called a covenant. Covenant, that's for next week. Forget about covenants now. Ignore I even said it because they're much more complicated. We're only doing easements today. The book also discusses profits and things of that nature. Don't worry about that. Just ignore it, right? They don't come up. All right, so the 2 major types of easements the 2 major types of servitudes we're talking about in this class are easements and covenants. Okay? All right. Let's try question 3. Then I'll continue lecturing for a bit. Question 3 is before Caitlin in a few moments. Okay, this one's tricky. Let's see what you guys do with this one. Question 3. It says, a person can pay to trespass on somebody else's land. Okay, true or false? Question number 3. Excuse me. All right, another 10 seconds. I'll go to Caitlin. All right. Okay, Caitlin, what is your answer here? Okay. Well, first off, I'm sorry to give you PTSD. What is trespass? You don't have to stand, I promise. What's a trespass? Do you have to do that? You have to stand in torts?
Yes.
Professor Moore?
Yes.
God, you'll be grateful you had her. Trust me. You may not like it at the time, but you'll be very grateful you had her in a couple of years. Just trust me on that one. Okay, so you can sit. You can sit. You don't have to stand up. But what's a trespass?
Basically, going on someone's property
Without their consent, right? And it's a tort. It's a crime, right? You can't do this, right? So trespass is no good. You can't commit a trespass, right? So Alexis, do you remember when you discussed trespass last semester? Can you allow someone onto your property?
Sure.
What do you call that? Remember that phrase? Yeah, but what'd you call it last semester? What'd you call it in torts? You called it something else. I saw Jade nodding. Remember the phrase? Anyone? Licensee or invite? Yeah, licensee. Ah. So now you connect it, right? When you invite someone to your property, they're called a licensee, right? Because what do you give them, Alexis? A license. Now, oh, see, EE, right? Me receiving. Now it all makes sense. Yeah, your law school career just came together, right? When you invite someone, I guess the example might be, a plumber or a maintenance worker, whatever it happens to be, right, onto your property, you invite them for a specific purpose, right? To fix the machine, to do whatever, right? We go to licensee. Why? Because you give them a license. A license is permission to come onto your property. Now, Jade, does that permission last forever? How long does that permission last? However long you want. Can you revoke it? Say, you know what? I'm done with you. You can leave now. And if they stay on 1 minute longer than your permission, what are they doing? Trespassing. Right? So again, you can give someone permission. It could be oral, right? You can say, hey, come on by, fix my washing machine, and when you're done, you got to leave. And if you change your mind, you can say you must leave now. If they're remaining, that's a trespass. So the definition of a trespass, if we can maybe modify for some more, I'm sorry to do that. I should never do that. But it might be entering without consent on someone else's property. Because if you have consent, it's not a trespass, it's a license. So Jordan, what'd you put for this question? Question 3. Why'd you put true? If you pay someone to enter, Jordan, is it a trespass? And they accept your money. What is that? Something else. Might be an easement, might be a license, right? So the answer to this one's actually false. So you guys did, whoa, look at that. Oh, wow. You don't get closer than that. It's right down the middle. 1 second, Hillary. That's right down the middle. So let me just explain my thinking and then I'll go to you if I haven't explained it, okay? If you're paying to enter someone's land and they accept your money, that's proof of some agreement. At that point, you're an invitee or a licensee, right? They use different phrases, invitee or licensee. If you're on the property with consent, you are not trespassing. Now, if something changes, then you are trespassing.
I think I just thought of it very literal, because technically if you trespass and then they sue you and you pay damages.
That's not what I meant, but okay. I see. This is what. No, that's fine. This is why I don't ever give a final exam with multiple choice, because I can never write a question with precision. Participate 75 very smart law students. I can't do that. My brain doesn't work that way. Unless the question is just so simple that it doesn't matter. But any question that reflects nuance will have that problem. All right, so everyone see why that's the case. If someone comes on your land with consent, he's an invitee or a licensee or something like that, that can be revoked. Later in class, we'll talk about licenses that cannot be revoked. That's the case from Oregon with the well, right? But as a general matter, a license is temporary and can be revoked. An easement, however, cannot be revoked. An easement is a permanent servitude. An easement is a permanent servitude. It can't be revoked. If both parties agree, you can eliminate it, right? But that requires both parties to consent. Excuse me. All right, so Max, I'm calling you. I think you're next. How would you define an easement?
I would say like it's a transfer or like something given in consideration for the rights in your land that you don't own.
Say it one more time. I'm not sure if I followed it entirely.
You own land and someone's like in exchange, maybe like money or something, you give someone the rights into your land, so that way.
Okay, good. That's good. Okay. Easement is a permission to use someone else's land, right? It's permission to use someone else's land. Now, Maxim said enter someone's land. That's not wrong, because in most cases, easement includes the right of entry. But you could also have easements for different things. For example, withdrawing water, for example, right? That's the case we have today. Maybe the right to hunt, right? Maybe you need to enter the land to collect livestock, whatever happens to be. You can frame an easement in many different ways. You could also have a negative easement, where you say, I will not do something. I will not draw water from this well. I will not hunt the livestock. I will not pollute, right? Easements can be fairly broad. You can do lots of things with easements. But what's important for you all to remember is that an easement is a servitude that's permanent. It can't be just wiped away by one party. Both parties have to consent. Okay? Everyone okay with what an easement is? Okay. The terminal. Oh, Hillary, please.
You say both parties, what if it's like a joint, it's for like currency and common or something, then all of them have to agree?
Yes, ma'am. We'll do next class how to eliminate an easement, or might be the class after. I can't remember. But we'll do a class on how to terminate an easement. It's a little bit tricky. We'll cover that. All right. So let's talk for a minute about realistically how it works. And throughout this class, imagine that there are two properties. And I just made these up, but they help me think about it, so maybe they'll help you as well. Wet acre and dry acre. Right? So imagine that wet acre has a lake or some body of water on it, and dry acre does not. Right? Dry acre has no access to water. In fact, that's sort of what the facts are in the Oregon case, Mund. Okay, so with these facts, whoever lives on wet acre has water, and whoever lives on dry acre does not have water. So this is a classic case where an easement might be appropriate. That way, whoever lives on wet acre whoever lives on dry acre can get water from wet acre. And whoever lives on wet acre might get some money to compensate him for this person entering their property. All right. So there are two types of easements, and I'll give you the terminology later. But let's just describe it just in plain language, right? Kelsey, let's say you own dry acre and you really need access to water. And when you buy it, you make a deal with the owner of wet acre and say, look, my name's Kelsey. I'm thirsty, right? I really want this water. We make a deal, right? We make a deal such as I can enter your land anytime I want and I can get water. What would you call that?
That would be an easement.
Let's try this. Let's everyone do question number 4. Let's see how we do in this one. Question number 4. What is an easement in gross? What is an easement in gross? Excuse me. All right, another 15 seconds. And just get ready. I'm going to ask question 5 back to back. So just have your thumbs ready. Okay, I'm going to stop it here. Next question, question 5. What is an easement appurtenant or pertinent? I usually say appurtenant, but I'll accept either pronunciation. I don't really care. What is an easement appurtenant? Okay, another 30 seconds. Okay, all right. Another 10 seconds, and we'll come back to Kelsey. Okay. Kelsey, help us out here. What's an easement in gross?
So an easement in gross, is just, it gives like a person, the ability to make specific use of the land, whether or not, they necessarily own the land.
Okay. So you said an easement in gross is an agreement that allows a specific person to benefit from property. How's that? Right? And we could put it up here, right? So we have easements. An easement in gross is an easement that allows a specific person to benefit from the use of property. Specific person, right? With an easement in gross, it doesn't matter where that person lives. Whether that person lives on dry acre, black acre, white acre, whatever, right? With an easement in gross, the easement benefits a particular person. Sarah, what is an easement appurtenant or pertinent, if you will?
An easement applies to the actual owner of the property.
When you say applies, just spell that out, please.
It gives specific use to the owner of the property in regards to the benefit of the easement.
Very good. With an easement appurtenant, it's an easement that benefits the current owner of a piece of property, right? An easement appurtenant is an easement that benefits the current owner of a property. And notice I said current owner. As Blackacre sold from one person to the next, whoever happens to come into the ownership gets the benefit of the easement. Right? With the easement in gross, it follows the person. With an easement appurtenant, it follows the current owner of the property. Sarah?
What an example of that be, for example, like a path that crosses a property?
Yeah. Yeah, let me give an example. So Patty, let me come to my example before, right? I gave this a moment ago. Right. So you have wet acre and you have dry acre. And the owners reach an agreement. That is, Patty can come onto wet acre whenever she needs to get water. What kind of agreement would that be?
That one is the easement in gross.
Correct. Yeah, that's it. When you give a name, that's the trick. That's how you know exactly where it is. When you give a person's name, when you actually name the person, that's a clue, a very good clue. That's a clue you're dealing with an easement in gross. Okay, when you give a person's name, that's a very good clue that you're dealing with an easement in gross. Wafa, how do you know if there's an easement appurtenant? What are you looking for? What's your clue? Correct. If I say the owner of dry acre can enter into wet acre to get water, what kind of easement is that? Try it again. If I say the other one, yeah, the other guy, right? If I say the owner of dry acre can enter onto wet acre to retrieve water, what kind of easement is that going to be? Appurtenant, correct. Right, appurtenant. That's the clue. When you say the owner of some piece of property, it is going to be an easement appurtenant. Then
And so once you give the easement in gross, you can't take it back?
no, it's a vested interest. It's a servitude. It lasts forever until the parties either abandon it or they relinquish it. We'll do in the next class. Can they be sold or transferred? Is that your question?
No, I just so is it one specific person or should it be the group?
If you're naming a group of people, it's still being gross. So imagine you say, the son, the daughter-in-law, whatever it happens to be, right? That's still in gross.
You give an easement, like, you're the transfer of land, like say,
Isn't that the subject of our case today? Church of Christ.
Was that after? 'Cause I thought they sold it at the same time. That's when they put on the easement, and then later they were trying.
We'll do the case. We'll get to your question. I promise. If I don't, you can come back to me. Okay.
What happens if you have an easement saying crossing one's land?
So you block access.
Well, like, do something else that you weren't kind of authorized to do over the easement.
Okay. So an easement's very specific, right? You cannot exceed the scope of the right easement because that's a trespass. If you have an easement to enter someone's land to retrieve water, and you start, bringing your cows to drink in the lake, that is beyond the scope of the easement, right? If you start planting livestock or planting crops, you're beyond the scope of the easement. That's a trespass. So you have to stick with whatever the easement says.
I thought you said earlier that easements are permanent with license, take away if you violate the scope of the license.
Well, a license can be revoked for any reason, no reason at all. You don't need a reason to revoke a license. So you know what? I don't want to do the same one. Never mind. With an easement, you can't revoke it, but you can enforce the terms, right? Again, you'll confuse these terms. I know you will. So try and get them cold in your notes. The easement in gross benefits a person. The easement appertenant benefits the current owner of a property. You okay with that?
Is the remedy for violating easements always the same?
I mean, if you violate an easement, you can probably seek damages or an injunction, right? I mean, I'll give you another example, right? Let's say you have permission to enter a property by foot, and you start driving on the property. You're trespassing, right? The easement only gets you foot access.
Last semester we had a case where they had the license for selling and they left something. The man went over and passed away. So we can be also item part of the thing after that.
Like to deposit garbage, I guess. Oh, that couldn't be moved.
Or like, I guess, like, under. That was, they left it, but they had permission to have it within a certain point of time.
I suppose. Guys, just one at a time. Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering, how you see like some people will be allowed to place like construction items on property for a certain.
You need permission, so I guess an easement could accomplish that. You could.
Easement or.
You could probably do either. It's probably easier. Randall?
There's some cases about when the government maybe went property put up like a distance pole or something to that nature. And the property owner went out there and was mowing his lawn and hit this metal pole and ended up killing him.
Hey, that sounds awful.
So I thought that would be a little different since the government did have permission.
Yeah, that's not really an easement case, I don't think. Yeah, but if you could have an easement to deposit garbage, you can leave waste. I mean, that's what you could do. Thank you, Randall.
What if your easement becomes a nuisance?
Trying to merge classes on me, aren't you? Give me an example, Hillary.
Let someone dump trash in the land, or dump too much.
It becomes a nuisance. I think you might get an injunction against your easement. Yeah, I mean, you can't use your interest to the injury of others, no matter what. Ivan.
So your choice there, that one was the violate your easement. Do you lose it or you just get sued for trespassing? Like after you get sued.
We'll talk about how to terminate easement later, but the short answer is no, you don't lose it. Right? There may be rare cases where the court may terminate the easement through misuse, but it's got to be really egregious. It's not very common. What else? All right, so we have a terminology so far, right? Easement in gross and easement appertenant. Okay. Now let's give you some more terminology. This is question number 6. We'll do 6 and 7 back to back. So do 6 first, then we'll do 7. A lot of questions today, I'm sorry, but I think they help reinforce the readings. What is a dominant tenement? A dominant tenement. What is a dominant tenement? Okay, that's another 10 seconds or so. Okay, I'm gonna stop it here. Next question. Question 7. What is a servient tenement? What is a servient tenement? I'm sorry, what is a servient tenement? Okay, another 20 seconds. All right. 5 more seconds. All right. Okay, Hillary. Hillary, what is the difference between a dominant tenement and a servient tenement?
So frankly, I think I know what they are, but I just know how they just like I think how they go together. Not
Okay, then tell me that.
I feel like the dominant tenant wouldn't it be like the land and then the servient kind of like the land owner. Or and then the servient is the landowner and they kind of work together to make the crew land. I didn't think I tried to.
No. Alejandra,
Easement, like subject to an easement, like it serves.
okay, so let me make this point clear, Alejandra. I think you're right. Do the terms dominant and servient apply to people or property? Property, not Hillary, not the person, the property. I think you might say the other thing. All right, so at the outset, please keep this in mind because people get it wrong in every exam I've ever given. The phrases dominant tenement and servient tenement describe property. They do not describe people. Again, dominant tenement and servient tenement describe property and not people. If you write on an exam that John was the servient tenement, it means you know what you're talking about. But it happens every year, right? I say, what is a servient tenement? Not who. I ask what, and they still give me a person's name. And that's your clue. If I'm saying what, that's not a person. It's a piece of land, right? So the phrase is dominant. And by the way, you also see dominant estate, servient estate. You'll see both these. So just be on the lookout. Dominant tenement, servient tenement, dominant estate, servient estate. You'll see both of these. These phrases describe property. So let's just use wet acre and dry acre as examples, right? Ashrita, let's use as examples, please. If there's a lake on wet acre and there's no water in dry acre, and they reach an agreement where the owner of dry acre can get water on wet acre, which one is the dominant estate? And let me finish my question. Which one's the dominant estate and which one's the servient estate? Why do you say wet acre is the dominant estate?
Because it's where the water is at,
What does it mean to be dominant?
to be in control. It's like one is dependent on the other.
No. Hillary?
Okay, I'll answer since I got my phone. I think that dry acre is the dominant because it's the one that's getting the benefit of the
Which one's serving?
wet acre.
How's that one, Ashrita? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So ask yourself, Which one is serving? That's how I remember it, right? Which estate is doing the serving? And which one's dominating? Right? You ask yourself which one's serving and which one's dominating. All right, I'll come back to this, Rita. Which one's doing the serving here? Wet acre or dry acre?
Here, wet acre is serving.
Because it's providing water. So which one's dominating? Which one's taking over? There you go. So the dominant estate is the one that's benefiting, receiving the benefit. In this case, it's the owner of dry acre. Wet acre has the water and it's doing the serving. It's serving at the estate. Okay. Everyone see that? Lloyd. Yeah, you can see dominant tenement, dominant estate, serving tenement, serving estate. You'll see it both ways. I'll accept either one. They're both correct. I usually say tenement. I don't know why, but that's what I usually say. It's a little bit longer even. I think I say tenement to avoid getting confused with like future interest presence, all the different states. I think it's just one less word to confuse. Probably why I started doing it. All right, so I just want you to walk through this, right? When you recognize you have an easement, you first have to make a decision. Is an easement in gross or an easement appurtenant? And then after you do that, you have to identify what is the dominant tenement and what is the servient tenement, right? This is why I kind of indented them on the board like this. We have a hierarchy of choices you have to make. Questions so far? We good with this so far? Yeah, a lot of terminology being thrown at you. All right. Let's try question number 8. I think Gwen is next. Question 8. A owns wet acre and dry acre, owns both. A conveys wet acre to B, but retains easement. An easement. Sorry, typo. Retains an easement for owner of dry acre to enter wet acre. What kind of easement is it? Is it appurtenant? I'm sorry, is it A, easement in gross, or B, easement appurtenant? Answer the question, I'll call on you. I know you do. Just answer it and I'll call on you. I know it kills you. I know. No. I just answer the question. I'll call you. I promise in 30 seconds. Answer the question. I won't be here during the exam. You can't raise your hand. Okay. Another. I think we got just about everyone. All right, Gwen. I'm sorry, Hillary. What's your question?
Essentially, the dominant and I mean, it wasn't related. I just thought of it.
Okay, so you're asking about something called reciprocal easements. Was that in this reading or not? It might be the next reading. Okay, so Gwen, I'm sorry to make you wait a moment, but I'll answer Hillary's question. What if, let's say, wet acre has water, right? Let's say dry acre has timber, and you make a deal, right? The owner of wet acre can get timber on dry acre, and the owner of dry acre can get water on wet acre. That's sort of your question, right? That's what's called a reciprocal easement, right? Where you reciprocate. In that case, wet acre will be both a dominant and servient estate. And dry acre will be both a dominant and servient estate with respect to the different easements. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so they don't become one easement just because it's the same thing.
Nope. There are 2 easements, and you have 2 sets of estates. Each easement is linked to one dominant and one servient. But if there are 2 easements, there'll be 2 dominant and 2 servient. That you didn't need that to answer this question.
I know. I just thought.
Yeah,
of it.
no, I know. It's okay. We'll move on eventually. Lloyd.
So in
right,
that
Glenn.
scenario, one side can't live up to the easement, so.
The other easement remains full effect, though. The other easement remains in full effect.
And then in terms of remedies, are we just looking at damages? I mean, you can't enforce that, but, right.
If let's say they build a fence so they can't access the timber, or they can't access the water, you get an injunction to take down the fence. Yeah, just like anything else. Gwen, my friend, I'm sorry you're waiting so patiently. What is your answer to this question, please? So you said this is an easement in gross. Why do you say an easement in gross?
A doesn't
What did I say was the clue to use when deciding if it's in gross or appertenant? What's the clue I said?
Oh, it's a name.
Is anyone named in this question, Gwen? Who's the benefit? But who's the benefit extending to? Read the question out loud, please. Please. Yeah.
A, when it's a
Good. Good.
A, when it could be, whoever seems easement for owner. known as
Stop. Who gets enter wet acre?
Owner's relative.
Who's the owner of dry acre? At the present moment. But what if A sells it later? It doesn't matter. If the benefit belongs to the owner of a property, that applies to whoever is the current owner. Now look at question number 9. I'll just do it right now. Gwen, take a look at question number 9. Just read it. It says, A owns wet acre and dry acre. A conveys wet acre to B, who retains easement for A to enter wet acre. Look at these questions back to back. They're identical, except for one piece of information. In question 8, the benefit is for the owner of what is it, dry acre. And in question 9, who gets the benefit? Okay, so I'll try again. What's the answer to question 8, Gwen? B is an easement appertenant. Okay, about 7% we got that one right. Right? Gwen, what's the answer to number 9 then? Correct. Question 8 is an easement appertenant, B. Because it's for the owner of dry acre. Now, I didn't say the current owner, right? I don't need to say that. If I say the owner of a black acre, that's telling you appertenant. But in question number 9, I'm telling you A, that's a person's name. This is an easement in gross. Yes, Julianne?
So if you were to say
Yeah. If I actually said this is for the current owner of Blackacre, that would seem to suggest it's A. Because whoever's the future owner couldn't claim to be that person, then being gross. Good question. All right. All right, so everyone get that question. Sydney, let me ask you a follow-up, please. In question A, which is the dominant estate and which is a servient estate? We're looking at question number 8. Which is a dominant estate and which is a servient estate? Correct. Why? Why? Just say it again a little bit louder. Maybe people didn't hear you.
the dominant is striker.
Dominant Striker,
and
servient Swedecker. Why? Okay. In question number 8, the dominant estate is the one that's dominating, that's getting the water, getting the benefit. That's Dryacre. Not the owner of Dryacre. Again, the dominant estate is referring to a piece of property. It's Dryacre. The servient estate is one that's doing the serving. That is Wetacre. It's not the owner of anyone, it's just Wetacre. All right. Everyone with me on question 8. Daisy, if I can call on you, please. Okay. Daisy, in question 9, which is the dominant estate and which is the servient estate?
driver is the dominant.
Okay, and what's a servient estate? Okay. Okay, so you're saying wet acre is doing the serving, that's serving estate, and which is the dominant estate? Okay. Who has the benefit in this case, Daisy? Who's actually benefiting? Okay. Is A person or a piece of property? Okay. When I said a few minutes ago, when I say a servient estate, a dominant estate, they're referring to a person or a property. So how can a person be a dominant estate? Is question 9 an easement in gross or an easement after tenant? All right, everyone. So let's do question 10. Everyone. Question 10. True or false? An easement in gross as a dominant tenement. An easement in gross as a dominant tenement. Okay. 10 seconds. Okay. All right. Maria, what's your answer to number 10, please?
False.
Why is it false?
Because easements and gross don't attach to. It doesn't benefit land.
Good. Does an easement in gross have a dominant tenement?
No.
All right, Daisy, you want to try again? Is there a dominant tenement in question number 9? No, there's not. That was a trick question. I'm sorry. I felt bad because I was anyway. Question 9. With an easement in gross, there is no dominant tenement. Okay. With an easement in gross, there is no dominant tenement. There's a serving tenement, wet acre, but there's no dominant tenement. And oh my goodness, this is the easiest. It's like shooting fish in a barrel for the exam. I give you an easement in gross and say identify the dominant tenement. Boom, like a quarter of you get it wrong. Like it's just automatic. So I'm giving you every warning in my voice I can give you. Don't make this mistake. Please don't. With an easement in gross, there's no dominant tenement. There's only a servient tenement. Got it? Yes.
So from question 9, it says that A conveys, basically I'm wondering, how can A give itself a easement?
That's our next case. Give me 5 minutes. I promise I'll do the next case. That's the English, the Church of whatever. Yeah. Correct. The serving tenement in question 9 is wet acre, but there's no dominant tenement. Julianne?
Is there somewhat of an analogous term for easements in gross or no?
No. In fact, I think this is question 11, actually. I think question 11 might get at this. I think this is question 11. Let's do question 11. I think this kind of answers, not really, but it addresses Julianne's question. So Adam, who owns wet acre and dry acre, conveys wet acre to Betsy, but Adam retains the right to use the lake on wet acre. What is a dominant estate? This is basically your question, I think. A, Adam, B, Betsy, C, wet acre, D, dry acre, or E, none of the above. What's the answer here? We're an hour in just with questions. That's what I expected. It's fun. Whenever they're reading short, it takes so long. It always happens that way. Okay. Another 5 seconds, and I'll give this one to Julianne. Okay. All right, Julianne, what's your answer here? The answer is none of the above. Which, none of the above. Literally, the question I just told you, you all just fell for it. About half of you fell for it. So first off, Julianne, is this an easement in gross or an easement per tenant? Why is it in gross? It's to a specific person. And Julianne, is there a dominant estate with an easement in gross? There is not. The answer is none of the above. There is none. There's no word for it either. You would just say that the benefit goes to Adam. There's no word for it. Now, I just want to show you these results. Did I just tell you that like a bunch of people get this one wrong and you just did it like 30 seconds later? Well, you flip, whatever. But I mean, okay, so A is definitely wrong because a estate can't be a person. Right, so let me put that. Some put wet acre, some put dry acre. It's definitely not wet acre because wet acre is servient. So it's either D or E, and it can't be D. Lloyd,
So there's no word for it, we wouldn't even call them like easement holder or owner.
you can say there's an easement for the benefit of Adam. That's what you call it. There's not like a term, like a legal term for it. Not that maybe there is. I don't know, but I've never heard of it. I hate when I say there's not something. There's never because maybe I haven't heard of it. But some court somewhere made up a name, but I don't know what it is. Ben,
Did Adam ever assign his rights to the deed? Or was it always?
we will talk about assigning easements next week. You're all anticipating questions we're going to do later, which is good. All right. So I'll come back to Alexis. She asked me a very good question. I just wasn't ready for it. Now I'm ready for it. So if you notice in all these questions, I say that, A retains the right to cross the wet acre, right? A retains easement for A to enter wet acre and so and so. What does this word retains mean? Alexis, what does it mean to retain something for yourself? Just help me out here. You have to keep, right? So you remember back to property one, I'm sure Chris had the bundle of sticks. Remember the bundle of sticks? When you have a fee simple absolute, you have the entire bundle of sticks, right? All the sticks. And maybe you give this person a life estate and you give that person a remainder. You give this person a term of years, right? And you take sticks out of your bundle. When you have a fee simple and you give someone an easement, you're giving them a stick from your bundle. But you can do it differently. Let's say you sell someone the property, but you keep a stick for yourself. You retain an easement for yourself. That is, I am selling Blackacre to A, but I'm going to keep an easement for myself so I can cross onto it. That's an easement in gross. Or I am selling an easement to B, but I'm going to allow the owner of Blackacre to cross. Right? When I say retain, think of the bundle of sticks. Right? Think of the bundle of sticks. I am giving you the entire bundle of sticks, but for one. I'm keeping one for myself, the right to cross. I am keeping an easement for myself in gross. I'm keeping the easement for the owner of some property, per tenant. But if you notice, every question I had the exact same phrasing. Why? Why did I frame the questions this way? Because at common law, not California, at common law, the only way to convey an easement was through the sale of property. You couldn't just walk up to someone and say, hey, can I buy an easement? That didn't work. An easement can only be conveyed when the property was sold. So look at all these questions the exact same way. Wet acre sold but retains an easement. I framed the question very carefully. Remember, one semester I forgot to put that. I soon flipped out, right? So I'm very careful at the. You're not the first smart students, but lots of smart students with these hallways. So the reason why I say retains because at common law, the only way to create an easement was the sale of property, right? It has to be in writing, has to be signed, the statute of frauds, but it has to be part of a transaction. Of course, our first case, Paula, is from California. And they ain't going to do that, are they? No, of course not, because it's California. So can you please, Paula, give me the facts in our first case, Willard, the Church of Christ scientists?
They went home to lot 19 and 20 and they were across the church.
Good.
And so people, one of them is Peterson, in Fee Simple, and he used it to build an office.
Good.
And then Peterson wanted to sell lot 20.
Aha. He didn't own it. So what did he do? Did he do the right thing?
He went to the king and he asked to buy the lot 20 so he could sell it.
Okay. Now, what was the problem?
that McKeon said that she would sell it on the condition that they would let them use that for parking, for church parking.
Correct. All right, so we have a situation. This woman allowed her church community to use a lot for parking on Sunday. So 6 days a week, the lot was empty, right? But on the seventh day, as it were, the lot was full. Now, did Peterson know this?
I think,
He knew it. Did
Yeah.
Peterson tell the buyer?
I think he said that they would want to, but he didn't say that there was a.
Okay, so here's the conflict, right? Peterson, again, was a crook. He promised to sell some land that he didn't own. So he basically made the deal to sell it, and they came back and bought it from the woman later. Now, in theory, at least, you can do that, right? If I say I'm selling you Blackacre, I don't own it today, but I acquire it later, it sort of works its way out, right? You can do that. It's not very honest, but you can do that. But the problem was he failed to disclose that there might be an easement. Now, Daniel, how did the church lawyer go about creating this easement? How do they? What do they do?
I'm really sorry, I'm not prepared.
Ivan? A little bit more details, please.
The lawyer drafted clause saying that he has the right to park in the garage and put it in the deed.
Okay,
So-
was this done in the fashion required by the common law, where you had to have a transaction?
No.
Okay, to be precise, who did the easement benefit? Did it benefit the buyer or the seller?
Benefited the seller.
Not the seller. Who got to park there on weekends?
Church.
Church. The easement benefited a third party, right? Again, usually think of dominant estate, serving estate, right? One's benefiting, one's burdening, right? But here they reserved an easement for a third party. Is this an easement in gross or an easement at per tenant? I have no idea. They want to guess? I really don't know. It's kind of a mess. Maybe I know. You think so? Okay.
I thought it'd be gross just because they're doing it directly for the church, and I imagine church, like, it's an entity.
It can go both ways. So imagine, today it's a Church of Christ and tomorrow it becomes a Catholic church, right? Could they avail themselves of the easement? Anyway, that's not important for this case. It actually doesn't matter, but just something for you to. Liv, did your hand go up? Okay, that's fine. I saw a motion in my corner. All right. So anyway, the lawyer drafts up an easement that says it will run with the land for the benefit of church purposes. So it's probably appertenant, but I'm not entirely sure. Okay, then McGugan sold the property and they closed the deal. Peterson mentioned the church might want to use it, but didn't mention the easement. Was that fraud? Probably. I think that's malfeasance or something really close to it. Material misrepresentation of facts. So I think there's probably grounds for fraud here. But that, again, fraud is contracts. I don't care about contracts in this class. Okay. Caitlin, at common law, were you allowed to reserve an easement for the benefit of a third party in this sort of transaction?
No.
That's correct. Please tell me why.
The court lists like a bunch of reasons why they rejected the rule.
Well, first off, just state it. What was the common law rule? Just start with there.
The common law rule was a reservation for.
Well, let me ask differently, Caitlin. At common law, what was the only way to convey an easement? Through a transfer, right? Did they transfer the parking lot? Was there a transfer of the parking lot from the old woman to Peterson?
No.
Didn't she sell it to him?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the McGugan sold the lot to Peterson. So there actually was a transfer of property. So that actually was okay. But generally, a common law, Caitlin, who would that even have benefited? Transfer, McGugan, right? So imagine McGugan sells the lot and says, this parking lot benefits me. I can park there. That's fine under the common law. Or maybe you say, this benefits some property that McGugan owns, right? You can do that as well. But this easement was different. It benefits a third party who had no connection to the transaction. And at common law, you couldn't do that. At common law, the benefit could only go to the person making the transfer or some property associated with the person making the transfer. So again, at common law, the benefit can only benefit the person making the transfer, McGugan, or some property that McGugan owned. Here, the benefit goes to a completely unattached third party, the church. Okay? You can't do this under the common law, right? So what happens here? What does the California court say? Of course they reverse the common law. Why did they reverse the common law? They always do that. They always say the same thing. Common law bad, right? Smash. Oh, I'll get to the steps later. But why was the common law rule so bad? What did it relate back to? What did it remind people of? What was that thing we used to do with dirt? What's that thing called? You got it. Live or season. Thank you very much. Good, you got it. It was on the tip of your tongue. I could tell. Right. The idea of this rule that you can't benefit a third party traces to feudalism, because you had these clumps of dirt, and only the people who are clumping the dirt in the woods can actually get benefits. And the court says we need not bind ourselves by the shackles of feudalism. It's always the same thing, right? This rule was made up 800 years ago. We don't care what happened at the time of Henry VIII. We just don't care anymore. So the court abolishes the common law rule. So as a result, now you can reserve an easement for a third party in California. Everyone get the rule. Grace, let me ask you a question, please. Imagine you were Peterson's lawyer, right? And Peterson says, here, there's this deed the church drew up. Is this enforceable? What would you have told him under the common law?
Under the common law.
So would you say, this deed won't hold up, you can do whatever you want?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Would you be liable for malpractice in California?
Before this case happened, I think no, but after this case happened.
Smart answer. I like that. Yeah, I like that. So I would actually tweak it. If you're in California, you're giving legal advice, assume the common law rule is going to be disposed of, right? Just say, well, client, under the current rule, you're fine, but this is California, and whatever, there's something in the water. This rule may not live long, so you've been advised. So that's my recommendation. Always hedge your advice at the court. No, I'm serious. Look, even if you're talking about a U.S. Supreme Court decision, that precedent from the Warren Court, that may not be here for long, right? So you would give that competent advice. All right, now Katerina mentioned the steps. Do you want to talk about that or no? So how could they have actually done this at common law? It's actually kind of messy. How would they have actually engaged in this transaction at common law if they wanted to do it the right way? Well, you can start. Maybe I'll finish.
Okay, so
Okay.
And then the church could have sold it back to her with an easement reserve
Okay.
for the church benefit, and then the McGugan could have been sold it to Peterson, and the easement could be
Excellent. You nailed it, brother. Very good. That's actually not easy. Let me take a few minutes. This always complicates people, right? At common law, you can't benefit a third party. So what would have to happen? First off, McGugan would convey a fee simple to the church. The church has a fee simple. Right? Then the church can give it back to McGugan, reserving an easement for the church. Right? In other words, so number one, McGugan gives a fee simple to the church. Then the church gives it back to McGugan with an easement for the benefit of the church. So there's not a third party being benefited. The benefit is by the grantor. At that point, McGugan has the parking lot subject to the church's easement, and McGugan can sell it to Peterson with that easement. So there are 3 transactions that have to happen. The first transaction goes from McGugan to the church in fee simple. Then it goes back to McGugan with an easement, and McGugan sells the land with the easement to Peterson. Right? Once the easement's on the land, it can be shopped around whoever wants it, but it can only be created through that sort of transaction between A and B.
If they were following common law, could they not argue that McGugan did benefit because she wanted the church?
Nah, that's a benefit means using the parking lot. That's what benefit means. This 3-step process, what's called a straw transaction, STRAW, straw, right? You're basically using a third party for almost like a dummy, right? You don't intend to let the church keep it. You're giving it to the church temporarily for the sole purpose of putting the easement on the property. It's just a temporary transfer. Now, if the church was really mean, once they get the fee simple, like, okay, it's ours, never mind, go away. You can't force them to sell it. It's theirs. It's their fee simple interest. So it's a risk. Lawyers will often do straw transactions where they'll have, like, their secretary be the straw, just to hold it temporarily, because in theory, at least, it's a trustworthy person. Maybe not. I don't know. They'll run with the property. Exactly. Yeah. How do you destroy a joint tenancy? You would have one joint tenant transfer their interest to a straw. That makes the tenancy in common and goes back to the tenant. All right. So California said, we don't need to do this stupid straw transaction. Let's cut to the chase and allow them to just reserve. I mean, it's expensive to have the lawyers drawing this paperwork, that paperwork. It takes time. California says, let's cut to the chase and allow the deal to be structured with the 3 parties at once. All right, we good? Exactly. It's actually exactly the same. It was a married couple where one of the, if I believe, was it Bobby Sampson, where the woman conveys the interest of herself to break up the joint tenancy because she hated her husband. One of the Schwartz, one of those cases, but I think, yeah, I know the one you're talking about. All right. We go with Eastman so far? We have 10 minutes left. Let's talk about licenses. It'll be a little bit brief because I think it's actually a much easier topic. A license is usually oral. Doesn't have to be oral, it can be in writing, but a license does not need to comply with the statute of frauds. Why does a license not need to comply with the statute of frauds? By definition, it's temporary. It's not meant to exist for a long time, and critically, it can be revoked. A license can be revoked. It can be canceled by the licensor. So there's no need to have it in writing. It can be oral. Difficulties arise, however, when we get to the area of detrimental reliance or estoppel, if you will, right? When someone relies on an oral promise to their detriment, the courts have to decide, is it something more than just a oral promise, a license? What effectively happens is a license can be deemed irrevocable. Irrevocable, that means it cannot be revoked. And if a license cannot be revoked, it's basically an easement, right? Again, if you have a license that cannot be revoked, it functions like an easement. All right, so let's look at this case. I'll give the facts sake, and we're a little bit short in time. Oh, this is another family dispute. It's sad. I hate when families squabble, don't you? Right, so you had a mother, a father, a son, and a daughter-in-law, and they were living next to each other on a pair of adjacent properties. There was water on one of the properties called Wet Acre. There was no water on the other property called Dry Acre. At first, they were living, everything was happy. They worked together building these facilities to take out the water. They shared the cost. Everything was great. But then they started to argue. They argued about how to divide up the water. Sad, right? And they go to court, even worse. Was there actually an agreement? The court says no. There's no evidence of the meeting of the mind, so to speak, right? There's disputed records. There's not really any paperwork showing it. They don't have a clear writing. The lawyer doesn't even remember what's going on. So there's no actual formal easement. right? There's nothing that would comply with the statute of frauds. But then they get to the idea of a license. And the court asks, even if there is no writing, can we deem the promise made between the mother and her son as an irrevocable license? And the court says yes. In this case, there does not need to be evidence of a formal agreement. Again, they don't need evidence of a formal agreement. They're going to enforce the license. Why? Justice, equity, right? We cannot allow this to work. And the court relies on this concept that you see all the time, which is detrimental reliance. The son and his wife took out a loan on the property. They built a residence. They shared in the cost of the water equipment. They helped assemble, they helped build the equipment. All these things show that the son and his wife relied on this promise, relied on this permission. And it will be unfair, inequitable, unjust to revoke this license. Even if there's no proof of an agreement, the license cannot be revoked. Right? So here the court says we're not revoking the license. Now, what's the remedy they order? Very curious. They order a 1/2 interest in the well to the son. They get an easement to cross over. By the way, an easement cannot be revoked. That's permanent. Now, it's an easement in gross, to be clear. I think this benefits only the son and his wife. If they sell the property, I'm not sure the easement transfers over. But the court orders an easement in gross. And they also have to share the cost of maintaining the system, which I think is actually kind of fair, right? They can't free ride. They both have to share the cost of running the well. Maxim.
I forgot.
Okay. Yeah, Connor.
So whenever you have the people, the city, right, that will come onto your land and will check like the gas. Is that all under?
Yeah, no, I know. Right. So utility workers have lots of easements. So if you think about it, there's probably a gas pipe under your house somewhere. There's probably a sewage pipe. There's a water pipe. Who gets permission to do all those things? If you actually check your property, I'm sure there are a bunch of utility easements there. And that also gives them permission to enter to inspect the equipment. People have a cell phone tower in their backyard. There are easements everywhere. Yeah, I mean, even I've looked at my blueprints for my house. They're freaking easements everywhere. They tell you the story with the guy who was digging my front lawn. To tell you that, I was once teaching a class. It was during Zoom, and this guy was taking this pick and was digging at my front lawn. I was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And I'm sitting there teaching my class, and I go outside. I'm like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I work for AT&T." And I'm like, "What do you think?" He's like, "Well, I have permission." I'm like, "Show me." He's like, "I don't have to show you anything." So I'm like, "Oh God." So I mean, I could have just turned my sprinkler system on until he resolves it. I have this thing that's pop out, but I don't want to be a jerk, so I let him finish his. He was doing a job, whatever. But I was just teaching. Who the hell is this guy who's putting down a cable for AT&T? He was just laying it down. Right? He dug up my front lawn and didn't give a damn. And in fact, he basically went under the sidewalk to run it over. It was very strange how he did it. And I called my HOA. I was like, "Yeah, they have permission. They have an easement." That's the answer. You think I know this, right? But That's on the other hand. Yes, Alexis.
For the one case, they were saying that I think can be irrevocable when it's coupled with interest. So here, they gave him 1/2 interest and they gave him an easement.
Correct,
So
both.
aren't they both irrevocable?
Or him. I don't know that can be inherited. Right. I again, it's a tricky thing when a court issues a ruling in equity. I don't think it's interest that can be inherited or conveyed because it's his particular injustice that they're remedying. Right. But the reason why they gave both is he has access to the water and he can go to the property to retrieve the water. Imagine they just gave the interest in the water, but they put up a fence.
Right.
You need both the easement and the interest. On the other hand. Yeah.
So like the teenager who lives with their parents, is that a license? So what is that?
I don't know. Children in the eyes of the law are not tenants. They're children. So That's what they are. But yeah, your parents can evict you if you're over 18. Under 18, it's a little trickier. There's child welfare issues. Because they cut you off also, right? Sorry. What else? All right. So there are a couple. Sorry. There are a couple cases after the Oregon case. The courts go all the way in this one, right? The simple lesson is put it in writing. Don't shake hands. Don't rely on trust because you can't trust anyone. You really can't. But don't trust people for easements. Okay. All right. So let me wrap up, and I'll let you out of here in a few moments. Keep your terminology straight. Right. So today we did easements. We'll do covenants. I think next week or the week after. I can't remember. Your first step is to characterize what kind of easement you have. Do you have an easement in gross, or do you have an easement appertenant? If you have an easement appertenant, ask yourself, what is the dominant estate and what is the servient estate? If you have an easement in gross, ask yourself, what is the dominant estate? But there is no servient estate with an easement in gross. Please don't make that mistake. And then with licenses, usually licenses are oral, they can be written, they can be revoked at will. They don't need to comply with the statute of frauds. But in some cases where equity commands, the court will make the easement irrevocable. Will make the license revocable and treat it as an easement. Did I say the wrong thing? Oh, I did it. There is no dominant estate with an easement in gross. I'm sorry. Thank you, Daisy. You call it. Keep me honest. It's good. You know, I don't really use notes. So it's mostly in my head. So eventually I'll flip things. Okay. I think I got everything right. Sorry for that last one. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. I will see you on Tuesday. Oh. I just dropped the Zoom.